Hello everybody. In this screencast we're going to look at Fragments. So this is the first app that we're going to build using Fragments, and they are very similar to activities. However, Fragments live inside an activity. They have their own life cycle. Their life cycle tends to follow the activity's life cycle. So let's look at this assignment. So this assignment we did before, but we used activities. In this application you only have one activity and multiple fragments. So we have one activity and multiple fragments, and this is the first fragment. Let's say this is the main fragment, and then this is the registration fragment, this is the department fragment, and then there's the profile fragment. And basically this is the application we'd like to build. Let's have a look and see how we're going to build this. And this is our first encounter with Fragments. So let's see. So let's create a new project. So here's Android Studio, and we'll create a new project. Here it is, and basically we'll call it in class 4. Okay, blank activity, empty activity. Click next, and we'll call it in class 04. Okay. In class 04. Okay, so here we are. Now let's just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, cool. Here it is. Maybe I can use the PDF file. Okay, now so let's make it a little big. So basically we have the couple of fragments. There is the main fragment, registration fragment, department fragment, and there's the profile fragment. Okay, cool. So I'll go and create them. All right, click new fragment. I'll use the blank fragment, and the first one is going to be called the main fragment. Here's the main fragment. All right, click new fragment, blank, and this is going to be the registration. Here's the registration fragment. Right click new fragment, blank, and this is going to be the department fragment. There it is. And then finally the profile fragment. New fragment. I'll call it the profile fragment. Okay, cool. So now I have all these fragments. We need the picture. I did download it somewhere. Here it is. So here's the picture. I'll drag, and I need to drop it under the resources drawables. So here it is, drawable. Just need to drag it and drop it here, and here it is. So I dragged the picture inside here. I have the picture. So now I have all what I need to build at least the first fragment. So let's look at the main fragment. Okay, close all. All right, so let's look at the layout for the main fragment. Here it is, and then the code for the main fragment. Okay, so now you ask yourself, there is a lot of code here that is there that comes with the fragment. You ask yourself, am I going to send any data to this main fragment? No. So basically this is going to be the loading fragment. There is nothing in it. You just click, it goes to the next screen, to the registration screen. So there is no data. So we're going to remove this piece of code, because this code is related to sending data to the fragment at initialization. So we don't need all of that, and also we don't need all of this code, because this is the code related to sending parameters to fragments at registration. All right. Now I could also use find view by ID and so on, but I think we should use view binding. So in order to use view binding, you open the Gradle script, which is the module, and then here we go and say we type in build features view binding. We set it to true. All right, so let me disable completions. So you could use GitHub Copilot, but I'm not going to use it here, just so that it could take you step by step. So I need to do this: build features view binding to true. Sync this now. Go back here, and instead of inflating things like this, I'm going to use the view binding. So with view binding, a class will be created. Its name going to be fragment main binding. So here is fragment main binding and binding. It was automatically created by the system for me once you enable view binding. Okay, and let's double click here. Okay, and now here we do binding equals fragment main binding inflate, and here is the inflator, the container is the parent, and then basically false, following exactly the same. You see here it follows something similar to this, and then what we return is not going to be this. We're going to return binding.getRoot. All right, so that's the setup for the main fragment. Now let's go and look at the main fragment layout. This is the main fragment layout. We delete this. It comes with a frame layout. I want to change it, so I right click, convert to constraint layout, and then we have our constraint layout. So this is a constraint layout. Now I'd like to add the picture here, so I'll go on image view or text view first. We put it here, and we can set up the constraints for it. 1, 2, and then 3. I could add a padding if I want to, so let's go back to the code here and add a padding. Here is 10 dps of padding, design back again. Here is the welcome. Okay, add string value, welcome. All right, here it is, and okay, so I have the welcome label, and I can make it a little bit bigger. All right, here it is. This is the welcome. Now I need to add the image. Here is the image view. I drag it, I drop it, and I pick the welcome image and I click OK. And here we are. The first constraint, the second constraint, we add this to welcome, and here is our margin, and then I can add a button at the bottom. Here it is, and 1, 2, and 3. You can even add a constraint here, so now it's going to be centered, but anyway, you want it to go all the way up. I can drag this 50 all the way up, so in that case you see it goes all the way up. Alright, so here is the image that we have. So I have that here. We have the image. We set up the button 1 and 2. Here's my button, and basically you want to call it register, so I'm going to click here, click on the string value, register, here it is, and here we are. And the button, we call it maybe the button register. All right, cool, here we are. And then the welcome, I can change that, make it look a little bit better. I want the 2 exclamation marks. Here's the 2 exclamation marks, space and 2 exclamation marks. Add it in the string and go back here. Here it is, welcome. We have the screen, we have this button. What did we call the button? We called it, let's go back to design attributes. We called it button register. Okay, cool. So now where do we write the code here for button register? We need to on view created. There is a method called on view created. Here it is. And now I can write the on click listener for it very easily. I'll say binding dot button register dot set on click listener new set on click listener new on click listener. So you see here the binding is amazing. I didn't have to find view by ID and all the stuff that we used to doing. We just have to do it this way, where you use the binding to find the components, and the binding already has these components. See, it already has the button, right? Okay, so we have the button. We want to go to the next screen. Now we want to go to the next screen, but we have to do it through the activity. So if you look at the requirements, clicking on the register should communicate with the main activity to replace the current fragment with the registration fragment. Okay, cool. So now we're going to communicate with the main activity. So before we do this, I want to look at the main activity layout. Where's the main activity layout? Here it is. And the main activity layout should be empty. There's nothing in it. There is constraint layout, and I'm going to call it, for example, the root view. Okay, so that's the constraint layout of the main activity is going to be called the root view. All right, so basically when you click, you want to tell the activity, this activity that to do something. So basically, in order to do that, we will need to create an interface. So we need to create an interface inside the fragment. Here's the interface, and that interface will be called, for example, main fragment listener. Here it is, and inside it we'll say void go to registration. All right, so that's basically the method that's going to be called. And now who implements the interface? Whoever implements the interface is going to be the activity. Now, so we need to get an instance of that interface, and that we get it in the onAttach. So there is a method called onAttach. Okay, and in onAttach we get the context, which is the activity. So we do this, we create an mListener, here it is, and basically mListener will be equal to we cast the context to the interface implementation. All right. So now basically, what is the context? That context is going to be the activity, okay, which actually implements the interface. So now here, when the user clicks, you just go say mListener.go to registration. Okay. Now let's go to the activity. There's the activity, and then this activity needs to implement. So it implements, and then we will do the main fragment listener. All right. Now the main fragment listener is an interface, and it's declared here. It has one method inside it. So the main activity, it's not happy because you need to implement that method. So here it is, implement the method, and here we go to registration. All right, perfect. So now, when the main activity starts, we need to load the welcome, what do you call it, the welcome screen first, right? So basically this welcome screen. So now in order to load the welcome screen, we get fragment manager, get support fragment manager dot begin transaction dot commit, and then basically here we're going to add a fragment, and basically this is the new main fragment, and we add it. Where are we going to add it? You see here dot add. We need where are we going to add it? Where are we going to add it? And what's the fragment we're going to add? So r.id dot, and this is the root view, and we're going to add to it the new main fragment. Okay, so now if we do this, if we run it, you will see that when this main activity loads, it will display, right? So it will display, okay, it's still running, right? It's still building, and it's going to run, and once it runs, it will display here the fragment. So now this is 24. I should have run it on 31, but anyway, it should work. All right, here we are, and here we are. You see here, it loads this fragment, right? Now, I run it on 31 so that we are consistent with other demos we did. But anyhow, so it's the same thing, right? So now in the main fragment, we can also here in the on view created, here we could say get activity dot set title to, this is the main, and this is going to be, what do they call it? The main. Okay, I want to call it main. Here it is. Okay, now when we run this again, you'll see that I could set the title to main, and it will show main here, and here we are. Now when you click register, here is the on-click listener. It uses the listener to call this method called go to registration. The listener is initialized here, and it's initialized to be the context, which is the activity. And you see here the activity has this method. So now what we want to do is we want to load the registration screen, and the question is, do we have to pass it any data? No, we don't pass it any data. Okay, cool. So now if that's the case, let's go to the registration screen. Then the portion where data passing at registration, at initialization, we remove it. All of this code is data passing at registration, at initialization, I mean. So all of that stuff we don't need. Even don't create, we don't need it here. Right. And here we are. So basically you see that that's the main the registration fragment. I can also set up binding for it also. So it's called fragment registration. So it's going to be fragment registration binding. Fragment registration binding, here it is, and basically the same story. So binding equals fragment registration binding dot inflate, and we get the inflator from the method as a parameter, then the container, and then false. Here we are, and then we return binding dot get root, and we're good to go here. We don't need this. And then basically here we go in and on view created, and then here we get activity dot set title, and we're going to call it registration, right? Okay, cool. So we have set up a little bit registration here, Let's go back to the main activity. Now what we need to do is we want to replace. Let's see, what do they say here? Push. It says push the current fragment on the backstack. So replace the current fragment. When you click register, replace the current fragment with registration fragment. Push the current fragment on the backstack. Okay, good. So basically I'm going to go here, get support fragment manager, begin transaction, and then I'm going to commit. I would like to replace and you see here it needs a container ID and a fragment. r.id with new registration fragment, and then basically add to backstack, and here is the default fragment. This is the default stack. All right, so basically here, and we're good to go. So basically what should this do? It will replace the current fragment with the registration fragment and take the current fragment, put it on the backstack. All right, so let's run this and see. Here we are, the main fragment. We click on register, takes us to the registration fragment. Now notice if I click back, it takes me to the main fragment because it pops the backstack. That's the default behavior of the back button. Click here, click back, register, and back. Cool. So now let's go build the registration fragment. Registration fragment is very similar to something we built before, which is the registration. Basically, this whole app, we built it before. So now let me do this. What I'm going to do is build the registration fragment. So now when we look at the registration fragment again, what does it look like? It looks like this. So basically there is a name, email, ID, and department. So let's go add these strings. Here's the strings. So I have name, email, ID, and department. Oops. Maybe I can copy them from the previous project that I had. So if I look at this repository, activities, it's under activities. Remember, we did this for activities. So in class, and then under the solution, under the application, under its source, main resources, and then there are under values, then there are strings. I'm going to copy these strings. Here they are, all these strings. Okay. And here is the strings. Okay, some of them will repeat. I'll remove them. Okay, so here is the strings. Similarly, if you look at the layouts, so I have a layout for the registration activity, right? So I can copy that. Okay, so that's the layout for the registration activity. So if you go back to the registration fragment, here is the registration fragment. Look at the code here, right? And if I just paste it here, Control V, and basically what I would like to do is I'll just move the context. You see tools.context. This is just stuff related to the Android Studio. So here it is. It was activity. I changed it to fragment and I delete this. And now when I look at the design, here is the design. Okay. Now it's not happy for some reason. I think it's just related to the size, but here we are. We have the registration fragment built based on the layout that we used in the activity right now, but it's being used in a fragment. Right, so here it is. You see here it's a fragment, and I have all the stuff that we need. Right, so we have, and then we have a submit button, we have a select, and so on. Right. Okay. So now let's see what happens when we run this. Does it work? I'm just trying to save time here and reuse some of the code that we wrote before. Here it is. I click on registration, and it shows me the registration screen. Okay. So now, when we look at what we would like to do is, the user needs to enter name, email, ID, and then select a department. Now, this is where it gets exciting. So now when you click on select department, it needs to go in and display the department or replace the current fragment, which is the registration fragment, with the department fragment. Okay. So now we are trying to show you how to do communication between fragments, right? Okay. So now let's see. So what we need to do, let's go do a little bit of coding in the registration fragment. Okay, here's the registration fragment. Now, if you look at binding, you see here binding dot button select department dot set on click listener new on click. This is when you select the department, and then you also have binding dot button submit dot set on click listener new on click listener. So basically, these are the two buttons we have, right? And these are the only two information that we're going to store, right? And now, in the registration world, we would like to set up clicking on the department. So basically, clicking on select, we need to go to the department fragment, and we need to do that through the main activity. So clicking on the select, replace the current fragment. It should be done through the activity. So this means we need an interface. So we need to create an interface, define an interface here, and it is the interface, and we call it the registration fragment listener. Here it is. And then what do we need here? We have a method void go to department. Okay, here it is. So basically that's this. And then we do the same thing. We need to set up a variable here, call it mListener. Here it is. And then implement on attach or extend override on attach, and then mListener equals the context. Okay, we have to cast the context to the listener, and then the context is the activity, which is here is the activity that hosts the fragment, and here it is. It needs to implement this registration fragment. Options, enter, import the class. Here we are, and then basically now we need to implement the method, and we go here, implement the method, which is go to department. And then what does it say we should do? Replace the current fragment with the department fragment, push the current fragment on the backstack. Perfect. So basically we will do something very similar to this, but instead we will go to the department fragment. So basically we replace the current fragment with the department fragment, add to the backstack the current fragment, and then commit. All right. So now in the registration fragment, what I'm going to do is when you click on department select, I'm going to do mListener dot go to department. Right. So when we run this, here it is, and then basically you click on register. We are in registration. We click on submit. Nothing happens. We never implemented this listener. We click on the department, and then it goes here. So now it still shows the registration because we need to set up the department fragment. So then here's the department fragment. You ask yourself, am I going to pass it any data? No. It will pass data back, but it doesn't receive data at initialization. So we remove all of this. We remove all of this. We also remove all of this. We don't need all of this. And then we can use binding also here. Here is, it's called fragment department. So it's going to be fragment department binding, and here's binding. And then similarly, do binding equal fragment department binding dot inflate. We have an inflator, container, and false. All right. And then we return binding dot get root. All right, good. So we are good here with regard to the binding and setting up the layout, right? And now similarly, we need to do on view created, and here we could say get activity dot set title to department. Okay, and then basically we're gonna look at the layout in a little bit, but the layout, I'm also going to use the same approach that I used here. So basically this is the layout for the department from the activities work that we did. Here is the activity department. I will copy it. I'll go to the project, and similarly the fragment department. Here is looking at the code. I'm going to paste the code here, and basically I'm going to copy the department and put it here. Basically tools.context is just an attribute that helps Android Studio know that this file is related to this activity and so on, right? Okay, so that's this. And now we try to build to remove these red stuff, and it should go away. Okay, here's the department fragment. We're good here. We go back here, and options. Let's build again. It should work, I think. You know, if we run it, it will work because this is automatically generated when you build. And here it is. It's okay now. See, here it is. We click on register, click on selecting a department. It takes us here. Okay, cool. So now we just have to worry about the wiring. You see here, when you click back, it goes back, right? So when you click select department, it puts actually the registration fragment into the freezer and then displays the department fragment. When you click back, it takes it out of the backstack or of the freezer, if you want to think about it this way. So now we have some stuff done, right? Now we want to get back the department. So basically, let's say we want, when the user clicks here, they pick a department, they click on select, we want to get the department sent to the registration fragment and display it here. Okay, so that's very straightforward if we think about something. Let's see. So now let's have a look at what happens when the registration fragment, so here is the registration fragment. What happens when it comes back from the backstack? Okay, so now let me just put a log D here, right? And basically I'm going to say this is the registration fragment. Okay, so that's the registration fragment on view created, right? This is the registration fragment on view created. Okay, So now let's see what happens. So this on view created, and I will also have it for on view, on create view, right? I'm gonna copy that here. So it's gonna print that. So now let's run this and see. I'll go look at, and let's filter it by registration fragment. Okay, so now when I click here, you see here, it on create view gets called first and then on view created. Good. So now when I click on select, notice I am here in the department. Now when I click back, it will pop the backstack. Notice what's going to happen when I pop the backstack. When I go back, you see it redraws the layout again. So these two methods get called again. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to do the following. So basically when the fragment comes back from the backstack, it redraws the layout again, right? So these two methods get called again. And that's why these two log messages were appearing again. So now what I'm going to do is in the department fragment, I want to send when the user clicks submit, when the user clicks the submit button or the select button, I want to pick whatever department they picked. I'm going to send it back to the activity. Then the activity needs to find this registration fragment from the backstack and send it the department information. And then when the registration fragment comes back from the backstack, it will find that department value and it can display it. Okay, so now let's see how we're going to do this. But keep in mind that when a fragment comes back from the backstack, these methods are called again. The on view created and the on create view and on view created gets called again. All right. Okay, so now in the department needs to send the department that's selected to the activity. So we need an interface, and that interface we're gonna call it the department fragment listener. All right. And this is going to be void, and I will have to set department. Okay, so the set department and then a string to represent the department. Okay, and then or send department. Okay, send department, and then another one void called cancel department. Okay. All right, good. So that's this and this. Now, if we look here, we have the two. We need to figure out. We are building this, so we need the cancel and the select. So basically, the cancel. Before I do this, whenever you declare this interface, I'll do the same thing. mListener on attach. mListener equals context. Here it is. So it's equal to the context. And then basically we go to the binding dot button cancel dot set on click listener new. There is the new on click listener, and then similarly binding dot button select dot set on click listener new on click listener. So basically when the user clicks the cancel, we'll just tell the activity, so the mListener, do cancel department, which is whatever method we defined here, right? And then similarly, when they select, we'll say we need to find out which department they picked. So basically, department they picked, we get it from here, and I'm going to do that. So basically, we'll do integer bind selected ID equals binding dot radio button radio group, right? Dot set on click dot get checked ID, right? And then you say if the selected ID. So basically we can start off with the string department equal to maybe computer science. Here it is. And then if the selected ID equals to r.id.button SIS, and then this is going to be department will be equal to software and info systems. Right, here it is. And similarly we'll do it for the other ones. So there is an else if for the other ones, bioinformatics and else if, right? So this is the radio bioinformatics, and then radio for data science, DS. Okay, so this is going to be data science, and this is bioinformatics. Okay, cool. So that's this. So we have a department after all of this is said and done. And then after that, we just say mListener dot send the department, and here we go. So basically that's what we're going to do when the user clicks, right? Now in the main activity, we need to implement this interface. Okay, we'll copy this from here. Here is one, and then basically I could do comma, this one. Here we are, import the class. Now it's not happy, we need to implement the methods, and here are the two methods, and so on. Okay. All right, so cancel, what does cancel do? So basically at that stage, when you click cancel, we just want to go back to the registration. And basically all we need to do is we pop the backstack, get support fragment manager dot pop the backstack. All right, so now let's run this and see. Here it is. Okay, let me delete this. Okay, register, select, and now you see when I click on cancel, it pops the backstack. When you pop the backstack, you see it redraws the registration fragment. Here it is. Let me delete this again. Here, select, click on cancel. It redraws the registration fragment. It also maintains the whatever you had here. Let's say you entered, let's say Bob Smith B at b.com, and here is the ID. Okay. Now notice something. When I click on select, now the registration fragment now is on the backstack, right? It's in the freezer. If you click on cancel, you see it redraws it, but it repopulates the state of the registration fragment back to what it was. Okay. Now we want to send back the department. So basically the question of sending back the department is just a question of sending finding the, we need to, so we have the department here. We need to locate or find, right? Find the registration fragment from the backstack, and then send the department to the registration fragment, and then finally pop the backstack. Right, so that's basically what we would like to do. So now, in order to find the registration fragment, this means that when we created that registration fragment, we just need to assign it some tag that we can use it. Registration fragment, right? So basically when you create the registration fragment to start with, you can assign it a tag. Now this tag helps you to find it. So basically to find it, you just get support fragment manager, find fragment by tag, right? So basically here is the tag. And now this returns what? Find fragment by tag. What does it return? Control X, find fragment by tag, it returns a fragment. Perfect. So basically here it is. And then basically we know it's going to be a registration fragment, and we call it fragment. Here it is. Okay, and now it's not happy because it returns a fragment. It needs to be casted. So here it is to the registration fragment. And now we can check to see if fragment is not equal to null, right? Then I just want to send this this department to this fragment, right? So if you go to the department, the registration fragment, if we go to the registration fragment, here it is, and we just declare a department variable, just create a department variable here, string department, okay, or selected department, I can do that, selected department equal to null, just to start with, right? And then have a method, I'll have a method public void setup or set selected department to string, and you'll have a string variable which will hold the department. Here's the department, and then basically I'll say this dot selected department equal to department. So basically this is just a method to help you set up this, right? I can make this a private. Okay, so basically I just have a method that allows me to set up this variable. All right. Now, so basically what I can do that here. So basically I have the fragment, I have the department. I could do fragment dot setup set selected department to department. Cool. So then now here I just do get support fragment manager dot pop the backstack. So now basically when I pop the backstack, it will try to draw the registration fragment. So basically what's going to happen is that it's going to recall these functions again. So now inside this function, I have a layout now. What I could do is here, for example, I could check to see if selected department is equal to null, then I'm going to do something. Else, I'm going to set it up. So basically, if it's equal to null, I'm just going to make it equal to an empty. So basically, I'll go here and do binding.text view selected department dot set text to nothing, right? Otherwise, binding.set the text view dot set text to the selected department. All right. So basically, I could do this here now because of the life cycle of the fragment. So you see here, you click on register. I click on select here, click on software information systems. I click on select, and now it shows software information systems. Select again, bioinformatics, select, and it shows bioinformatics. Now select, cancel, nothing happens because when you click on cancel, it just pops the backstack. When it pops the backstack, it does not change the selected department, right? If you want to make it that when the user clicks cancel, we want to, if you wanted to make it that when the user clicks cancel here to reset the department that is in the backside, we just need to change how we implement cancel. It will be very similar to this, but we're going to send it a department that is null, right? But anyhow, here it is, select data science. So we are very close to finishing this. Now we are able to select a department, meaning to get data from the previous screen to show up here. You see here. Now, what if I click back? You see here, I click back is the welcome. I click on register, takes me here. I click here, takes me to the department. I select the department. Now I can enter some information. So now let's say we want to continue on with this registration fragment. I want now to implement this side when the user clicks on the registration. So basically I can do that easily. I have a string, and that's the name, equals binding dot edit text name dot get text dot to string. Okay, here is the name. I have a string email equal to binding dot edit text email dot get text dot to string. So I have the email. I have a string ID equals binding dot edit text ID dot get text dot to string. So that's this. Now I'll see if email is empty, then I'm going to do else if email is empty. So that's the email. This is the name. The first one is the name, and then else if the ID is empty. Again, I'm not validating the email per se, but anyway, else if the department selected department is equal to null, then all of these are errors, else we're good to go, right? Okay. So now here I just have toast messages to display. Here I need to get activity. I need the context. Here enter valid name, right, and exclamation mark, and similarly the other ones. Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V. Enter valid email here, and enter valid ID, and then select a department, right? Select a department, right? And then finally here we have that. So basically now I just need to send this, create a Java class. We call it a profile. Here it is. And in the profile we'll have string name, email, ID, and department. Okay. And then I can create a constructor. Okay, here it is, which has all of them. And maybe also an empty constructor. Okay, here we are. Constructor select none, and then similarly I also do getter and setter with all the variables, and we're good to go with the profile. So now I can create a profile object. I'll call it profile equal new profile name, email, ID, and department, and select the department. So I have now all of these. Just let me make sure that it is the correct order: name, email, ID, and department. Perfect. So here it is. I have the profile. Now what happens is that when you click on submit, you have the profile. You want to send that profile to the profile fragment. Okay, you want to send it to the profile fragment. So this means that when the profile fragment is first created, it is going to receive some data, right? So this is, remember the part of these fragments that we keep on deleting because we say that at initialization doesn't need any data. But this profile fragment at initialization needs to receive this profile information. So basically I need to send that through the activity. So basically I'm going to add another method in the interface for the registration fragment. I'll say void. I'll say go to profile, and send it a profile. So I'll have a profile here, profile. So basically I'm going to send it a profile. Okay, cool. So now when we are here, I'm just going to say listener.go to profile, and I'm going to pass it the profile. Cool. So now where is that profile going to be received? It's going to be received in the main activity, and the main activity is not happy because we added a method to the interface that we didn't implement the method, and here it is, go to profile. Now we need to send this profile to the profile fragment. Okay, so now if we go back to the project, the profile fragment, here is the profile fragment, here it is. Now we ask ourselves, how many parameters we are going to send? We're going to send one parameter, which is going to be the profile object, right? So now here it is. This is the key of the parameter, so I'm going to call it profile, right? And that's going to be the parameter that I'm going to use, right? Here it is. I'm deleting this, and I'm deleting all of this also, all of that stuff. Now I can do a Control Z here. So basically I have going to have a profile. I'm going to call it profile. That's the profile that I'm going to send, right? And all of this stuff is bye-bye. Okay. Now if we scroll down a little bit, now we go to the other side, which is the new instance method. What are the parameters I'm going to send? I'm just going to send one parameter, and it's going to be a profile, and it's going to be a profile object that I'm going to send. And now you see here it creates a bundle, it creates a fragment, the profile fragment creates a bundle, and args.put, I'm not going to put a string, I'm going to put a serializable, right? So now I need to put a serializable. The profile object needs to implement serializable, implements serializable, here it is. So now we go back here, I'm going to put the profile where arg, the key is, this is the key, and then the value is profile. Okay, and then I will delete these two, and here we go. So I added the profile as serializable to the arguments. It's added to the arguments. Where do you get these arguments? You get them in the onCreate. Here it is, m profile get arguments dot get serializable, and it is arg profile. So I got that. Here it's not happy because it needs to be casted to a profile object. So here we are. So we are able to get the profile object by passing data from passing data at initialization to the profile object. Now we can use binding here also. So let's do fragment. Sorry, what's the name again? The name is fragment profile. So it's going to be fragment profile binding. Fragment profile binding. Here's binding, and we'll do the same thing again here. We'll do binding equal fragment profile binding inflator dot container dot false. Here we are, and then we return binding dot get root, and we're good to go. All right, so basically we delete this, and now basically we go here and we do the on view created, and we do the layout for the profile fragment. I'll do it exactly the same way I did it for the other ones. Go back to the code for the in class for activities, and here's the profile. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it here. Scroll all the way down. Profile fragment. Control C. Profile fragment here, and we're good to go. Right. So I have the profile fragment already set up. Go back here and here. So good. So now we say get activity dot set title to profile. Here it is. And then here we could just go ahead and say binding dot text view name dot set text to mProfile dot get name, and similarly the other ones. So basically similarly binding dot text view email dot set text dot it's mProfile dot get email, right? And then binding dot text view ID set text to mProfile dot get ID, and then finally binding dot department dot set text to mProfile dot get department. Okay, cool. So now you could see that we implemented all the code that is needed in the profile. Basically this part is the new instance method. It's not used yet. We're going to use it here. When you say go to the profile, we're going to use something very similar. So basically we'll do get support fragment manager dot begin transaction, right? And then we're going to commit at the end, and basically we're going to do what? Dot replace r.id dot root view with, we're not going to say new profile fragment, we're going to say profile fragment dot new instance, and we pass it the profile object. Sorry, profile object we are receiving here, and then we add to backstack, here it is. Now notice what's going to happen now. We run this, and where is this go to profile being called? It's in the registration fragment. We're calling it here with a profile object. Okay, we click on register, click on submit, says enter a valid name. Let's do this. Here's Bob Smith b@b.com, and here's the ID, and I try to go submit. It says select a department. I click here, software information systems, select, and I have everything set up, Bob Smith b@b.com and the ID. Now when I click submit, the data goes to the profile, right? You see here it is going to the profile. How does it go? Everything goes through the activity, right? So the activity is the host of these fragments, and in order to communicate with the activity, we create these interfaces, which the activity actually implements these interfaces, and that helps us orchestrate the communication between these fragments. All right, please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.